All right, Gorilla Banter Podcast. Another week, another episode. In studio, co-host Brock Washington, Dylan,
Woo-woo.
Matt.
Yep.
Say hi. And on Skype today, I'm not going to mess up your last name. You say it for me.
It's Kimes.
Jason Kimes.
Told you it was Kimes.
Hey, I just don't want to mess it up.
Kimes or Kynes? N or M?
K-I-M.
Like,
yeah.
Okay. That's not that hard, is
yeah,
it?
not everybody learned phonics, I don't think.
No, well, this is the great state of Louisiana, so I definitely did not.
And you're actually from
You learn
Mississippi.
anti-phonics
Yeah.
in Louisiana.
Was you born and raised in Mississippi? Is that?
For the most part, I was actually born in Panama. My dad was a captain in the Army over in Canal back in the 70s. So I was born there, but grew up in Mississippi.
Okay. So you grew up seeing an engineering feat. I mean, one of the great modern engineering feats, right? I mean, Panama Canal.
If I had not been too young to remember it, yeah, it would have been cool to see that. But
yeah, I've always wanted to see it. I've never had a chance to see it. That'd be crazy to see. So grew up in Mississippi, and just when would you say that you started taking a liking to let's call it sculpting, or using welding and metal materials and things like that you do now?
Well, in terms of sculpture, it was a little bit later on, but art in general goes back as far as I can remember.
Always
I don't
doodling in
remember
class?
a time. Yeah, well, church mostly. I don't think there was a bulletin that I didn't cover the back of it.
I actually work in a welding shop. I'm a fabricator and welder, and I actually saw the picture of your horseshoe sculpture. The man kneeling down, and I just remember thinking, like, I don't even know how he managed to like set that up, because like I know how much it takes to just sit there and just go with everything and get it all just right. You got to lay it all out. I don't even know what math you used or anything. I can't figure it out. I'm just honestly, it just fucking blew me away. I sat there staring at it, going, "What would I do?" And I just came up with nothing.
Well, that's sort of how the first year of that project went, was just me sitting around thinking, what am I going to do with 6,000 horseshoes?
Okay, so how did you end up with that? I need to know.
Yeah,
That's a great question. How did you end up with 6,000 horseshoes?
A bad trade deal, maybe?
No, it's the surprising thing is I don't know that I'll ever see that many horseshoes in one place again, because I called some farriers around here, and they're used so often for crafts, and everybody has a welder at home now, so there's all kind of wall hooks that are horseshoes nowadays. So it's pretty rare that farrier.
The crosses are a big one.
Yeah, crosses, and there's tons of boot grabbers. It's pretty easy to make weld up a little boot grabber. You can come inside and save the time of bending over, I guess. But what happened was a collector of mine down in just outside New Orleans, who had bought two sculptures that were on Poydras in New Orleans, right down from the Superdome.
Yeah.
He when I took those to install at his house, we were having lunch afterward, and he asked me we were just discussing my process of using multiples or lots of little bitty things to make big things. And he asked me if I could use horseshoes, and I said, if I can weld them, I can use them. And so he said he had some that I was welcome to have, and it took me a month or so to get back down there, but I had no idea I was going to pick up like 7 or 8 drums of horseshoes.
Wow.
That statue really is incredible.
I think it was the last 25 years worth of the horseshoes that came out of his stables.
Oh, wow.
Where they had just, every time they, reshoe the horses, they just throw the shoes they take off into the drums, and it just piled up. And he gave me every one of them. And there's probably 5,000 to 5,500 steel and another 500 to 1,000 aluminum, which I didn't even know was a thing.
Yeah, you actually just blew my mind. I didn't know there was such a thing as an aluminum horseshoe. I mean, I guess it's lighter.
Wouldn't that be too soft?
Oh, it's super light. Well, I don't know. I mean, it's super light. I mean, aluminum is only about a third of the weight of steel,
Right.
but I can only assume it's for like running, or it's for, it's more like a cleat than a tennis shoe.
Yeah, it's a soft ground. You kind of know what kind of terrain he's on, kind of thing. Wow.
Well, I just know that, like, because I can bend aluminum. Just, I don't know. It just seems really.
Yeah,
soft
but them
and
dirt
malleable.
tracks. I mean, I think he hit the nail on the head. The dirt tracks.
Right,
I mean,
but it's just, I don't know. Just thinking about it, I just figured they just end up getting gnarled up or something. I don't know. I don't know anything about all that though.
So you said the project took a whole
I don't either,
year?
but well, what I was referring to was the amount of time I spent
Thinking
figuring
about
out what I could do with them.
Okay,
Right.
okay.
Yeah, I mean, I had
So you just had him hanging
No
out with
clue,
ideas for a year.
Yeah, actually, I spent most of that year cleaning them and just getting them prepared.
Okay.
I was right at,
They got lots of them have nails in them. They got the rubber pad on some of them. So
I was wanting to ask that because I was sitting there
And it-
thinking, like, I know a bunch of those got rusted up or something, and all the ones in the pictures I seen looked like they were hit with a wire brush at least or something. So I was just sitting thinking, I know he had to have hit at
Oh,
least
they were
half of
all-
those.
they were all. I mean, they were all rusted, and some of them were just like the 25-year-old ones. They were all real nasty and pitted and thick, rust. But I've got a couple years ago, I got a tumbler, which is like a big rock
Oh, that's amazing.
polisher, except
I love
it's
those.
on a commercial scale. Oh, it's the best tool. It's probably my favorite tool. I think every art department or every sculpture department should have one because it's by far the best thing you could ever use for cleaning off castings or old tools or really just anything.
Now, how much could you throw in your tumbler at a time?
I think I was running 100 horseshoes at a time.
That's
Yeah, I think it was. Well, and that was based on size because some of them are pretty big. I mean, some of them can go 7-8 inches in diameter, but so that was more of a size issue. I could put probably 250 pounds in the tumbler, but 100 horseshoes is only going to be, well, yeah, it's about 100 pounds, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they're about a pound a piece on average.
so. Once you decide, how long did just the planning take for that specific sculpture? Like,
Well,
how much math was
Once
involved?
I figured, there's a pretty good bit of math. Once I figured out the idea, I made quick work of it because then I got fired up. And once anytime I get excited about a project, I'm going to buckle down, and that extra excitement can double or triple your energy
Oh yeah.
that you can put towards something like that.
Passion is important.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was around the middle of December, I think, when I came up with the idea, and I was done with it by the end of March. But
Jesus, man.
yeah, it was crazy. I never would have. I mean, if you'd have asked me a year ago how long that would take, first off, I
was
would have
gonna
even
say
been
6
able to say I
months.
could do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just said 2 years.
I was
But
going
if I
fast
didn't
with
know
6
any better.
months.
Yeah, just tacking it up. And
I was
get
talking about
going.
with a whole crew and everything, just day in and day out.
So
Have you seen Matt? Matt, you haven't watched that video I put together on Facebook or Instagram about showing the process for that, then, huh?
I don't think so. I saw your molds and all that, but I was sitting there watching.
Yeah,
it.
that's for the current one.
Okay. I
Yeah,
thought that was a
that's
different
for-
project. Okay. I wasn't sure. I thought
Yeah,
that
it was.
different.
No, you can go, and the only reason I put this together was because so many people are interested in the process that I use that I sort of, I did it. I just combined a bunch of still images, of posts that I was making as I went along, and put them together in like a sort of just like a little video montage. But it does show the process pretty well because the thing that let me knock it out so quickly was I made a clay model like a 9-inch clay model of that figure, and then I scanned it by taking about 75, 80 pictures of it digital, and I was there, just in the round, sort of like a matrix style,
Right.
and uploaded those to a service that rendered it in a 3D as a 3D model. So I could pull it up on the computer and pan around it and flip it, and it looked just like a little clay man on the monitor.
Okay, so were you using like an AutoCAD system?
Yeah, well, it's not AutoCAD, but it was similar. I mean, AutoCAD lets you like build up those three-dimensional components as you go from scratch. Well, this one took all those photographs, and my understanding is it uses the background, so it'll match up all the back. Because as you change, as you go around taking a picture of something, like if I want to scan my phone here and I go around taking, every time I stop, take a picture every 5 degrees or so, it has the background image that it can line up and match those two.
So it just,
and then it merges all those photographs into a 3D model, and then you can get rid of all the background.
Okay, but as far as getting started on the project, once you got all that, because now what you're saying is you could pull dimensions off of that model on your computer.
Well, what I could do is drag it into another 3D rendering or 3D modeling app, and that would scale it up. So I could go from 9 inches to 9 feet.
Right.
And the same app would slice it into slices. So I could slice it into 2-inch slices, and then pull out a PDF pattern of that weirdo shaped slice. The horizontal, all the 2-inch sheets horizontally, those weird shaped patterns would stack up to recreate that figure 9 feet tall.
So you built it like they do water and oil tanks. Just kind of like a plate ring at a time. That's how they do it. Yeah, they do it like a plate ring at a time and then stack it all the way up.
Well, not exactly. I rebuilt the figure by getting a bunch of 2-inch sheets of styrofoam, and I so I took the patterns from the slices out of the computer program, out of the app, and then had those cut on a CNC, and then I stacked those up. So I just reproduced the clay model as a 9-foot tall figure.
Okay.
And the good thing about the horseshoes was they were, they're only, they're not any thicker than 3/8 of an inch thick. So I just encased the whole thing on the outside.
We're probably losing a lot of people here, so like
this is ridiculously more complex than I could have possibly imagined.
Like, I understood all of it, but that's because this is what I've worked with since I was like 14, 13. Yeah. 13 is whenever I learned how to weld.
Well, so you guys stop me anytime.
That's what we're doing is I don't even know how to describe this.
No, I mean I get it. Basically, he's saying he built a little model, then built a big styrofoam model, then put the horseshoes on top of it, and then started the project.
I'm still baffled by taking pictures of something and then putting those pictures in the computer.
Well, that's pretty cool.
That was so cool.
I never heard of that.
I was sitting here
that was
like,
cool.
Holy crap, we're in the Matrix.
That was really cool. I haven't heard of the picture program you were using or whatever.
Yeah, before we get
That's the first time I'd ever used it.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
I mean, and that the technique and detail and the amount of process, I mean, first off, you have to have an amazing passion. So let's go back to church doodling.
Bragg wants backstory.
I want backstory. I want to go back to the church doodling.
Go back to church?
Yeah, so
back to church.
All right.
So the man's doodling in church as a young man. Was drawing your first passion? Was drawing how you got into scale and all those things, or was that just a stopgap?
Yeah, I think drawing's the beginning of it for everybody, because I mean that's, you pick up a piece of charcoal off the ground and you can draw it. So that's why our cave drawings are the first thing you learn about in art appreciation or art history.
Oh yeah, the French caves.
Sure.
France.
I don't know, some cave shit.
I think they're in France. I'm
pretty sure caves everywhere had drawings.
I'm just saying, like, some of the oldest ones ever found was in France, I think. But yeah, so was there ever a time that you were sitting there drawing and thinking, this is what I want to do? I mean, like, at what point does that start coming about?
You know, it might sound a little pretentious, but in all honesty, I don't think that I ever even considered it as an option other than just an. I'm going to try to figure out the way to say this. Like, I never saw a bunch of different options and thought I'm going to choose this one over those. It was sort of like it was that decision was made up for me. Like, that was just my thing.
You knew. And, you just had it. There it was.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's really all that's about all I cared about. I mean, it was as much a part of me as, the fact that I was, that I had curly hair.
I like that.
Well, I mean, in some ways, that's almost, I think we all kind of sometimes stumble into what we do. I know some of Dylan's story is that Dylan was saw a video one day of somebody being a fighter and was like, oh, that's me,
That's what I want to do.
Yeah. So, we all kind of stumble upon it in different ways. Now, what kind of student were you when it come time for high school and things like that? Were you the guy actually paying attention in class, or did you still need to be drawing while they were droning on about subjects and nouns and?
Well, I paid attention in class as much as I needed to, but I was actually homeschooled for most of my education. I did end up going to high school, so in 9th grade I started going to a public school, and by that point, I don't know, there was a bit of a culture shock just in general, but
I imagine.
Now,
it was
a conservative Christian family, I'm assuming, just from.
Yeah. That's just, it's basically a typical South Mississippi childhood.
Oh yeah, high school came like a ton of bricks then, didn't it?
Yeah, it was surprising in some ways because these kids had not been learning all that much, as far as I could tell. But I don't know that I would have been any more social had I grown up and been going to public school the whole time either. But that was always a little bit of an issue. Now,
a lot of your sculpting has a lot to do with the human form that I've seen so far. Mm-hmm. Did your drawing always have a lot to do with the human form, or is that where you're just kind of at now?
No, it didn't. It didn't really. To me, just drawing was drawing. It didn't matter what I was drawing because when I was a really young kid, I drew mostly like airplanes and stuff. And so it wasn't till I got serious, in college, actually start, trying to make more fine art that I was drawn to the figure. And I've always enjoyed figurative artists, other art that's figurative, and it was never that was never anything that I intentionally went toward. If anything, I probably went away from it here and there. But even the more abstract, formal stuff that doesn't have a figure in it, the figure is implied in one way or another.
Right. Yeah, what was that? I actually watched a video earlier this week about the Virtuin Man, about how the human form is a square, but the human form is also a circle, and how Da Vinci, all the stuff that he implied in that, when he did the.
It took me a minute to realize what the hell you were talking about.
I'm sorry, ain't that what it's called, the Virtuin Man?
I didn't know the name of it. I know what you're talking about.
I think it's Vitruvian.
Yeah, well, once again, phonics, not my strong suit.
I don't know. I didn't know what the name. I didn't know it had a name.
I'm not sure, but I think he just called you out.
This is his lane.
That seemed like a call out.
If he can't call me out in his lane, then hey. But
that was his attempt to try to break down the human form into proportions.
Right. Yeah.
So I don't think anybody's still been able to do it quite right.
Yeah, that was something that really impressed me in high school is because I got into the art program, and whenever you realize that everyone's face is symmetrically structured the same way, your eyes are the midpoint of your head, and then between your eyes and your chin is your nose, or I think that's right, and then the lips fall.
Yeah. And then your lips in between that. Yeah.
Yes, and that's really, like, because you think about trying to draw people, especially whenever you're little, the eyes are always way too high. Because you wouldn't think about being in the dead center of the face because of the hair.
Yeah, and then there's chin for days.
Yeah, dude. Listen, if I didn't use the eye trick that you just mentioned, I'd be drawing eyeballs in the middle of my forehead.
Yeah, exactly.
Just, you just don't conceptualize it. I mean, you conceptualize it in your head, but not based on reality.
Yeah.
Because it's in context of the, like you said, the hairline and all that.
Well, let's try this one. Brock and Matt, how many heads tall do you think the average person is?
Is it 7?
It's 8. Isn't it 8? Is it 8 or 7?
I was going to say 6.
It's 7 or 8, depending on,
okay.
That's why I said nobody's quite figured it out because, it's not even agreed upon now. I mean, there's just too much variation.
Yeah, and I know that most humans are their own wingspan, but not all people are their own wingspan, and
exactly.
They're at least close to it.
That I don't know if you picked up on the title of the horseshoe sculpture, but it's called 27 Hands.
Oh, that's funny.
For the
that's how you measure. That's how you measure.
Horses.
That's how you measure horses. Even today, horses are measured in hands. It's 4 inches, so that's that sculpture is 27 hands tall. It's not a horse, but you get the idea.
Right.
That's tongue in cheek. I like that.
Smarter than I am. Now, when you went to college, did you find that maybe because the curriculum?
Did you check my math?
Yeah. I wanted to know exactly how tall.
You're such a bastard child, man.
He did it on camera too. He didn't put it beneath the.
I don't care.
That's hilarious.
I didn't want to do it in
honesty. Now, when you went to college, did you find that the curriculum pushed you because it asked you to maybe all of a sudden step out of your comfort zone and inside these projects try, draw something, now build it in clay. Now, did that ever help your path any, or I guess let's talk about college for a minute.
It did. Yeah, it did. Now, undergraduate, not so much, but that's the undergraduate college is where I found sculpture. Because I went to a little junior college here for 2 years, and they didn't even have sculpture. They had ceramics, which is the closest thing to a sculpture program, and that's not really sculpture. That's a craft. But not to say it, and that's not to say it isn't art, but it's sculpture can just be anything. Ceramics has always got to be clay.
Right. Yeah. You always have to start with the clay base.
Yeah. So when I got to USM to finish out undergrad, that's where they had a full-on sculpture department, and that was the first time I'd ever even had the exposure to that. And as soon as I took the first class, that was it. Wasn't really interested in painting much anymore at that point.
Now, was it because it was challenging? Was it because you were using your hands? What do you think made you go, here it is?
I think it brought in other aspects of that interest me personally. Like, I'm a real physical kind of guy. I've always played sports, played outside, and been good with my hands. And when I found sculpture, it was a whole nother level of problem solving because the tools involved and the materials. I mean, you got heavy steel versus oil paints versus, in painting you got watercolor, oil, and acrylic. In sculpture you got stone, wood, steel, aluminum. I mean, it's a whole different, ball game, and that spoke to me in a way that I wouldn't have known. I mean, I probably could have guessed, but I never, It just it hit home to me perfect.
I mean, I think that was true for guys like even going back all the way back to like Michelangelo, right? He considered himself a sculptor before a painter. You know, if I'm not.
Yeah.
No, that's right. He ran off because he wanted to sculpt, not paint.
Yeah, he didn't want to paint. He wanted to sculpt, and people wouldn't leave him alone.
Yeah, no, he literally tried to run away, and they went and got him and brought him back.
So I know what it's like, the satisfaction back in the day, spending like a whole week on a sketch or a drawing or a really big picture that I'm trying to put together on paper. But what's it like for you? And you're talking about sculpting being that next level of art. Like, what's the satisfaction like putting something like that together? Is that just, does it blow everything else out of the water?
I don't know. I mean, that's probably subjective because whenever I would finish a large painting or a detailed painting I was proud of, I felt as proud about it at the time as I would finishing a sculpture now.
Okay.
So I can't say that you know, and since I don't do much painting anymore, I can't say that I've actually completed one of each at the same time to be able to judge the satisfaction against each other, you know? But I can tell you, I'm more satisfied through the process of making sculpture than I am painting.
Yeah. Is it because the work's a little harder
Definitely.
and a little bit more complex?
I think so, but I think that's what makes it more interesting too.
Yeah.
And more interesting to me because it's more challenging. Like,
exactly.
You know, sculpture is all about problem solving. You know, like how do you make a 9-foot man out of horseshoes? You know, there was a lot of problems to solve in that.
It sounds like it.
And it was, you know, and it was a hell of a thing to pull off. And now I got to say that's probably the most satisfying it's been to finish the sculpture because a lot more went into that than any painting I'd ever done.
There was a certain leap, right? You had to in yourself. You had to problem solve in yourself. There wasn't somebody you could turn to. There wasn't a textbook. It was kind of you, right? It was I have to solve this.
Exactly. I mean, it's been like that for years, but like that project, you know, the problem solving in that project, I had been picking up little bits and pieces of information over the years and never pulled the trigger to execute on any one process that I'd been interested in. But that one, they all just came together perfectly, and you know, I was able to hammer it out.
Now, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna go back to your question about college and school and being challenged because. You know, in undergrad is what I was saying at USM, University of Southern Miss. That wasn't so much challenging in the sculpture side of things because I was just being introduced to sculpture.
Right.
I was learning how to weld and learning how to work in a wood shop. So that was fantastic. When I got to graduate school, a graduate program is different because you come with a certain amount, you come preloaded with ideology and the whoever it was that taught you before.
So maybe like the last great gasp and chance to shape somebody, you would say, would be in that undergraduate program?
Yeah, oh, totally, yeah. I mean, there's probably graduate schools out there that aren't too concerned about it and wouldn't challenge you even still, but I think a good one would challenge you because you need to reevaluate and rethink that kind of stuff before you become set in your ways and not without the exposure.
Yeah, I mean, I think overall, I think that's maybe the importance of the first 2 years of college isn't necessarily the academics, right? It's let's push you out of your little comfort zone and bubble, right? And let's expose you to some things that you maybe have never been exposed to before,
Yeah, let's make sure you understand you don't know everything.
Yeah, because you don't.
Exactly, yeah.
Here's something I'm a little curious about, and this is probably off topic, and I don't want this to turn into you and Matt droning off on each other because I know if me and Brock let the reins loose, y'all are done.
Y'all are trying to avoid that.
But So my buddy Matt here, he learned to weld and all this, from what I understand, outside of a professional environment. Like, it's pretty much
Well, I mean, it was at a welding shop.
at a welding shop, an apprenticeship or however it was.
It was
but you on the
lines
other
of apprenticeship.
yeah, you on the other hand, you learned in college in a wood shop there, and I'm sure it was no cut corners. Everybody wears safety glasses the whole time. and all the professional avenues that you take to learn a craft like that. Whenever you got out of there, what was it like? Was there ever things that you did in there that weren't really realistic, or that were maybe held down too tight? Like, what's that education like?
No, but I think that had to do with my mentor in undergrad, because he had been there. He retired not the year I graduated, but the year after I graduated. So he was at a point where he didn't, he wasn't as concerned about all that as, an incoming new, freshly, grad school graduate coming in to teach a new program would be. He did, he wasn't full of all the piss and vinegar that a young kid would be, and he was just like, he was only concerned with the practicalities of getting the job done.
Yeah,
and results.
Exactly.
Very functional mindset.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. That's
good. Totally. And he knew what works, so I remember he told us a story one time. We did a lot of iron casting, and when he first started getting into iron casting and building furnaces, like 20 years before I was in school with him, he was trying to get some funding, I think, and he gave a presentation. It wasn't PowerPoint; it was actual slides. But he had to go back. He had to go back and with like a little fine tip pen draw safety glasses on the students that were demonstrating, in the slides themselves, because he didn't have them wearing anything.
Yeah, it's a different world, right? It's the
yeah. I mean, he didn't know any better at the time.
Don't let OSHA catch you.
Well, I mean, that's just the world we live in. I mean, you see them old pictures, right, of them guys on top of skyscrapers. There was no, safety harness or anything. You're like, how did those guys make it?
I'm so happy for safety regulations, but sometimes they get way too carried away.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean, they're regulating for the biggest dumbass that can possibly pick up a tool, and it makes all the guys who aren't.
God.
Yeah, and me and Brock know it best. The difference between troops in the field surrounded by NCOs doing practical shit, wearing the necessary shit, versus troops in the field when the colonel's in the field.
Right.
Everybody's got their pocket protectors, their safety vests, their goggles covers.
The colonel is the OSHA inspector, huh?
Exactly.
Oh, man. He's the...
Hands down.
Yeah. Why do you not have... Well, I've never needed that in 10 years in the fields. That's why I don't have it.
The thing I hate most is having to tie off 4 feet off the ground. That pisses me off, because I would rather just hit the ground than have that fucking rope yank my nuts.
Right.
Wait, what?
You have to wear this big safety harness if you go... Well, not big. It's just whatever. And if you go 4 feet off the ground at some mills... Like,
you have to wear it.
You have to wear it, even if it's just a ladder. And you have to hook it on a rung, and you have 2 hooks, and you have to hook another one before you take this hook off.
Which is it's designed for if you're 100 feet in the air.
Right. But some places are so bad they'll make you wear it at 4 foot.
4 foot's that's a decent one.
Yeah, well, they had to come up with a. They had to come up with. I mean, they had to come up with a differentiation between standing on the ground and being 100 feet up.
Yeah. Right. There has to be a point.
Right.
Yeah,
I like
there has
6.
to be a point,
I don't know about you. I feel like falling 5 feet, you get hit
I
your
like
noggin
6.
pretty hard.
Well, yeah, you can.
Well, you fall on your head all the time.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
I bet there's a guy somewhere that got hurt falling at 4 feet, and a whole bunch of people that
Yes.
falling from 4 feet.
That is exactly what happened.
Yeah.
You called it just like it is.
Yeah.
It's always that.
There's always one.
Yeah.
There's always the one guy in the company, just going back to the Army, there's always the one guy in the company that makes you have to have every safety briefing because they've broken every
Or tying
rule.
every tool.
Well, there's a reason that paper shredders say do not stick fingers in. Because some dumbass tried to push it all the way in.
Or an iron worker and it's got red spots and you can't put your hands close to the red spots. And I understand the red spots, but then the yellow spots, I'm like, sometimes I need to grab the yellow spot.
Guys like you that fuck it up for
Yellow
everybody
spot's
else.
fine. Yellow spot's to prevent the dumbass from getting too close to the red spot. Red spot's danger zone.
So there's a middle line to let him know he's getting ready to go into the
Yes,
red.
that's what the yellow spot's for. And some places don't have yellow spots. I don't like yellow spots,
not
but if
trying to-
somebody catches you grabbing yellow spot, you get written up, and it's bullshit.
Well, I mean,
And it should just be they deserve to lose that finger.
Sometimes, yeah. Like if you're sitting there and you're running something through a roller and your finger's getting 3 inches away from it, buddy, maybe you should get your hand rolled. Jesus Christ.
I don't know much, but I'm not sure if I should take my advice from a guy that never wears safety glasses.
I do.
He went blind last year for like 2 months.
No, it bounced under my eye.
you had a big mask on or a little mask?
I was wearing the safety glasses. I wasn't even the one grinding or cutting. Somebody wasn't watching.
I had a buddy of mine had got something in the eye, and he was one of the most safety conscious friend I had in the program, and he had glasses on too. It went straight up behind his glasses.
That shit sucks.
Are you ready for the truth? The ultimate truth? Sometimes shit happens.
I know you've seen the disaster Metabo pictures where the Metabo blades just shred apart.
Oh, well, I mean, funny enough, I don't really get. I mean, I don't like looking at that stuff.
I don't either. But sometimes there's always that one dude that you're around that'll just be like, check this out. I'm like, dude, I don't want to see that.
Oh yeah. I'm usually not around them very much after that, but
It's gross.
yeah, you're right.
I'm sorry, guys. I'm that guy.
Yeah, he is that guy. He's the
Dylan-
one that shows you that shit.
Dylan lives in a dark place.
Dylan, have you ever seen those pictures?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
You have?
Wait, what's... Well, I mean, I'm not sure exactly what you're talking about.
I'm not going to pull it up on that for the viewers. I'm going to
Okay.
spare them.
What's it called? What kind of blade?
So
The brand is Metabo. I don't even know what. I guess it's just like a 5. Is it 5-inch?
yeah.
They're
Metabo,
5-inch cutoffs, right?
well, yeah,
I don't
it's
even know what a
probably
cutoff is.
Yeah, 5-inch. Yeah, it's 4.5, 5-inch, 6-inch cutoff wheels that go
Yeah.
on an angle grinder.
Right.
But they're really thin because they're
cut
not
off.
they're super thin so you can go. It's meant to go through metal and not grind the top of it off. So, but that means there's not much there. So when it breaks, it can break pretty easy.
I'm the guy that needs the picture book. I'm still trying to put it together, what you guys are talking about.
So, I mean, I think we've basically said it at this point, though, that it was the undergraduate program that got you into welding, right?
Well, yeah, it got me into sculpture, and welding was a big part of sculpture, especially who was teaching me. And well, welding. There's a lot of sculptors who don't know how to weld and don't use welders, but a lot of sculpture, a lot of people who make sculpture have used welding at some point, and I just happen to use a lot of it.
No.
Now, and we talk about everybody has a welder now. It also seems everybody has a backyard forge nowadays. Do you do any forging, or you still melt metal any, or how does that with you? Ever decide you want to take a tool and beat it into something else, or?
I do. I forge to the extent that I need to solve a problem, or to make a tool to solve a problem. I don't. Blacksmithing is like ceramics. When I said earlier that it was a craft,
Yes.
that's not to take away from the artistic part of it, but it's focused on a material and not the conceptual side of things.
Yeah, and
blacksmithing it's about the process. So to me, beating a hot piece of metal is just a means to an end. I don't really care about the means; it's the end I'm interested in. But a craft is more interested in the means.
Yeah, and inside the means, like you said, not to take away from those guys, inside those means is some incredible creative artistry in of
totally.
itself of how to get there. But yeah, I was just wondering because like you said, everybody has a welding and everybody has some and going back to some of those horseshoes, and I think sometimes to get some of those round shapes right, you had to kind of heat them and kind of get them a little rounded, right? And
I want to know.
Not really. I mean,
Okay, never mind. Go on.
Go ahead.
No,
Okay.
no. Wait.
I want to know how you do those sculptures in the parks or whatever that you did. Fuck you. How you do those sculptures in the park with that dial, that steel dial you were making. How you make something that flat look round?
The steel. You're talking about the group, the standing men.
Yeah, the standing
in a
men in
circle?
or park or whatever or wherever that is.
Yeah, that's on Elysian Fields in New Orleans. That's
Okay.
That's actually a Deepwater Horizon Memorial.
Okay.
It's for the 11 guys that died.
Okay.
But I stopped you a minute ago when you were talking about the iron worker, because those are the punches that come from an iron worker.
Yeah, I saw that. But weren't you building something out of dowel? I saw the punches.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, you're talking about, well,
The solid
punches
pipe?
are mild steel. Yeah, I know. Okay, I see what you're saying. See, the punches got me to the horseshoes, and the horseshoes, I did the enlarging, the scale up, the larger than life size. Well, the current sculpture I'm working on now combines the two. It's another 3 times. The horseshoes are 4 times scale, so it's 9 feet tall. The one I'm working on now it's a 3 times scale, so it's almost 7 feet tall. But I didn't want to use the punches again. I wanted to use a weathering steel, which it used to be called Core 10.
Yeah, Corton.
Back when U.S. Steel came up with it. Yeah, and now it's it goes by alloy name A588. But what it is it doesn't continue to rust after that first layer of rust. So it's almost as weather. I mean, it's basically as weather permanent as stainless steel is.
They used to use it on bridges, right?
Yeah, bridges and towers. I mean, they make buildings out of this stuff,
Right.
because it gets that nice bright orange, red layer of rust, but it doesn't rust. It doesn't continue rusting underneath that. So, there's no problem with it being. It doesn't have to be painted. In other words,
Right.
So I've been using that, and I've been ordering in 1-inch round stock, and I've just been using a bandsaw to just cut it into my. I've been creating my own punches essentially,
Right.
but in a weatherproof material.
Okay, so so the reason you're using that the stock is just because of the Core 10 properties?
Yeah, because of the alloy. Yeah, because of the weathering alloy. Yeah,
Okay.
because the mild steel. I mean, I weld the snot out of these things, so they're going to last. They're going to outlast all of us, but they're still. They could eventually rust through because they're just mild steel. But it's the Core 10 that it wasn't until I got my first shipment of that I felt like a real sculptor, because that's what that's what old big time corporate sculpture is made out of.
What do you have to weld it with?
Surprisingly enough, you just use regular MIG wire, or like a 7018 rod, because it's I spent 2 weeks trying to get an answer to that, and all I could find out was just use regular MIG wire, because apparently it picks up enough of the alloy from the base metal to mix in with the weld for it to become a weatherproof weld too. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I mean,
good enough to-
that's the basic property of welding. Is that all you're doing is heating up metal until it infuses with the other.
Yeah.
So I mean, I guess that makes sense, but I just figured you'd have to use something
Yeah, but
different.
well, I did too. That's why I wouldn't have expected it to pick up enough to be, but like that is. Now I did find ESOB makes a MIG wire that is specific. It's color matched. Like if you're worried about the color or the rust, then they make a specific Core 10 wire that you're not going to be able to see the difference in the rust. I mean, in the weld after it rusts, but I'm welding everything on the inside, so it's not as far as and the wire I've been and I've got I've been using a dual shield recently, which that's a whole new thing, but that's kind of welding shop talk.
Right, yeah, we need to stop.
No, I mean it's fine. I mean,
I was about to crash the party and ask what the hell MIG wire was.
MIG is so you have.
That's the thing that goes on fire, right?
Okay, no. Okay, so there's 3 big different types
He
of
loves
welding.
it. Look at him. He loves it.
So have you ever seen? Okay, you remember in high school?
Wait, what?
No, I was just gonna say college, but no.
Okay.
I want to hear him explain it.
Yeah.
You remember ag in high school? All the kids that were sitting there saying we're going to be welders, but none of them did.
Yeah.
And they had the little rods.
Yeah.
That's stick welding.
Yeah.
You put a rod on your lead, you clamp it on, and that's what they weld with. That's stick welding. MIG welding is whenever you have this lead and a piece of wire runs all the way through it, and you have this big roll, and that's where your metal comes from. And they run an electrical arc in it, so it arcs off, gets really hot, and it melts into the other metal.
So it's
So
like
you can
wire.
run-
It's like wire.
It is literally wire.
And
You just get
and
the wire hot
So
enough.
instead of having
The stick.
instead of
Yeah.
having a stick, you have a wire.
Right.
Okay.
That's
Yeah, it's like a hot glue gun, but you got an endless glue stick.
See,
that just
Right.
that's what I need
shoving
right
it.
there. That's the kind of explanation that gets there.
and I don't even know how to explain TIG to you.
No, don't worry. I got
Okay.
hot glue gun. That's what I was picturing.
now, so you get out of college, and I mean, do you find yourself working mainly on commission now? I mean, how do you have a need and find the project, or do you build a project and then say, all right, now somebody come get this thing? I mean, how is that really working?
That's
out for you?
basically it.
You just build it.
That's
sell
really
it.
it. The last one.
Yeah, building it,
Yeah,
and then
I
who wants
haven't
it?
had- exactly. Yeah, and I haven't. Again, at the risk of sounding, like a pretentious jackass, I haven't been able to keep them, long enough to have 2 of them in the shop together, which is, something I'm awfully blessed by.
No, I mean,
Yeah, that doesn't sound pretentious
Well, it's
at
not
all.
pretentious because it's really good work.
fact. It's just fact. I mean, no, and I go back to the human form
Well,
thing. I mean, it's beautiful
you know-
stuff. I mean, me as dumb as
You
I
can be
am.
pretentious and right at the same time.
True.
Yeah, that's fair.
True. But I mean, I look at all your works, and every one of them, I'm like, pfft, if I could afford it, I'd take it.
If Brock could afford it, he'd have everything. Fucking
I
hoarder.
would.
Hoarder.
I would have like 30
Well,
acres of stuff.
Yeah, I think it's great too. I mean, I'm proud of the stuff I do, and that's one of the things that I'm happy about is that I don't, that it's all stuff that I've wanted to make, and it's not been commissioned. I mean, even the guy who gave me the horseshoes, it was a no strings attached gift of material.
That's
The
awesome.
only thing that he asked was that he have first crack at, a chance to buy whatever I make with it. So I could have made, I could have made a house with it and lived in it if I wanted to. It's just if I made it, and I probably could have too.
That amount of them.
It'd have been draft
If I made if I made a sculpture that I was going to sell, he wanted the first shot at it, and that's all he asked for. So even that wasn't, there was no mandate. He didn't dictate any of the terms of design or anything.
Yeah. Now that's awesome. Now you said that the other one was in memoriam of Deepwater Horizon. Now, how did that come about to you?
Well, that came about because I do have a guy that I work with in New Orleans who he's sort of the Don King to like if I'm Mike Tyson, he's Don King kind of thing. Like he puts on. He puts on the show. He puts on a lot of exhibitions down there, and he knows the people to know. He knows people with money, and he's got a little nonprofit he's put together. So he's and for him, he makes a living from it, but it's also a large way of how he gives back to New Orleans and his hometown. So his heart's in the right place with it. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't work with him. But when I met him, I got.
Hang that up.
Those two. So that's sort of how I've gotten to this point. But it was through him he was on a plane and happened to be sitting by one of the fathers of one of the guys that died on the rig during the explosion. And they just got to talking about it over the course of the flight. And I didn't have any connection to the rig or even the oil industry necessarily, but he presented me the idea of the memorial and suggested that, that I consider that as a potential sculpture because he thought it would fit with my aesthetic. And it took me a while, but after a little bit of research, it didn't take much before I really got invested in it. I mean, way more so emotionally than I expected. And, I had never done any kind of memorial of that type in the past. So, but I was really proud of the way it turned out. And through the process, got to know and got in contact with some of the family members, and that took it to a whole nother level of, profound.
Okay. Oh, yeah, I can imagine.
Now, you're a man brought up in a conservative Christian home. Was there ever a time you walked up to the parents and, hey, I'm an artist? I mean, or was it because you grew up drawing and things like that, they were like, oh, that's what he's going to be?
I don't know. I don't want to say just that because that takes away part of what I'm so proud of them for giving me as far as like the ability to choose something like that. But I mean, maybe that had something to do with it because they never blinked, they never batted an eye or acted, in the slightest bit concerned. I mean, if anything, they helped me develop it because they were always finding me some kind of private art lessons as a kid.
Oh, that's awesome. Shout out to mom and dad.
Yeah, and I mean, we have, artists and guys like that on here, and we even had like a webcomic on a couple of weeks ago, and it always seems to be the answer. I love to ask the question because the answer seems to be so consistent. The family was supportive. The family was cool with it. The family, because, and it seems to be very much so in the South, the first thing you do when you meet another guy, the guy shakes your hand and goes, what do you do? Hi, I'm such and such. What do you do for a living? And we seem to be so driven by
identity.
It's structured to our identity. So I just love when I find a parent who was like, my kid can do what they want to do, be what they, as long as they're freaking happy, and can make a life out of it. So I just always like asking that question. And I love the fact that every time it's the answer.
Yeah, it's kind of makes you wonder where that stereotype comes from, if that's always the answer.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I wonder, because it's always the cliche stereotype, you're right, is, no, you're going to get a real job. And I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've actually seen that be the case. Whenever you get somebody that's actually convicted to do something with their life, like, it's almost always support. I'd have to think really hard.
Maybe it's because they went and got a real job and nobody cares enough to ask them.
Right. The generation before.
Later on in life.
Yeah, our parents were, well, that was a trap. Yeah.
Here's a crazy question, and this is something that bugs me on a real weird personal level. But how do you feel about abstract sculpture? Because whenever I see some stuff, and I'll see it at colleges a lot.
Oh.
Well, my wife, we did a little photo shoot for her graduation at college, and we walked by a pile of fucking rods that looped around each other, and it was some sort of big, fancy sculpture, and it just looked like garbage, and it bothered me. And that's what I like about you, is how all of your sculpture is forms, and it's something. I'm not looking at it going,
Huh. Well, how do I look at it? Art and sculpture, it's one of those kind of things where you can, I don't really care anything about ballet or opera, and so I don't really have the patience to like invest much energy in trying to appreciate it. But I'm pretty sure though that if I spent concerted effort trying to, that's one of those things that you hear. You can appreciate it if you try hard enough. Like you can put energy into understanding and learn a little bit more about it, and then you can start to have enough knowledge to appreciate it on some level, and it builds from there.
Okay.
So like I don't bother with that. So no, that's what I'm saying. Like personally, I don't have the patience to give ballet enough time for me to start to be able to appreciate it. So and sculpture might be like that for you, but
not sculpture, but like abstract sculpture, like the things that don't mean anything, like
they don't make something.
Yeah,
a person
or an actual.
Well, I know. That's what I was getting to. I probably used a bad analogy because I used ballet as a whole thing, but not a type of ballet. But what the thing I was going to say was that I'm sure there's something that you could appreciate about that sculpture if you wanted to, but the problem is that artist didn't leave you a way in, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, because like the twisting of it and stuff may have had something to do with the play of the negative space and stuff like that, and Dylan doesn't know anything about negative space.
It could just, there's probably 100 different ways you could approach it, and that just be one of them, Brock. But I guess what I was saying was like that artist did not present whatever Dylan needed to be able to even start down that road. And I'm super interested in I'm conscious of wanting my work to be accessible. Like one of the things I didn't like about graduate school is, they're making, a lot of people in grad school are making art for other artists. And, it's sort of like how scientific research papers are peer reviewed and they're only appreciated by other scientists or other researchers, academics. Well, I didn't want to make that. The whole reason I decided to make public sculpture, part of that is to make sculpture or art that can be appreciated by the public. And I don't want to make something where they have to have, a 10-year art education degree or art history degree to be able to understand or to be able to have a way in to start to appreciate what I make. So
yeah. Okay.
I think
my aesthetic provides that.
Yeah, absolutely, and it does, no doubt, and that's something, and not just sculpture, but like paintings too. Whenever the few art museums I've been to, whenever I see the blank or the white canvas paintings where there's very little of anything, it's just a white canvas with off shades of white. You hear the cliche of people going, "Well, I could do that." You hear that a lot, and obviously they can't. Obviously, it's a very complex piece put together with whatever Brock was saying, negative space, but it's so hard for me to appreciate that at all because, like you said, it doesn't give me a way in, and I've never heard it put like that before.
Yeah, I was about to say, I really like the way you put that.
Yeah, they don't give me a way in, and I really think that's a good outlook on it.
I was actually about to say that. I really love the way you put it because I've always, I don't really have a interest in super abstract art. I'm just not interested in it. And I guess that's because I don't have a way into it without the knowledge of studying it.
Well, I guess one of the ways to put it for me is the way into it for me. The great thing about, I may not understand a ton about welding, but because he has this social media and he pushes out this social media, I have even another way into it of saying, by God, that's some hard work. He is legit working on that. Like the artistry sometimes is the perseverance, and maybe in a way that thing that you see that's all these twisting rods and stuff like that, if he would have showed you day by day some of the problem solving, or if you could have seen some of the problem solving that they had to put into that, you'd have been like, oh, I understand that this was maybe a form. He was just trying to perfect this twist. Yeah. And that's what this piece is about, is how to do that.
Yeah, so
understanding the finished product.
Yeah, so I guess you'd have to find a way to massively put that out for the public if you want something like that to be appreciated. Maybe like a little video screen there beside it, kind of going through the process. I think maybe people appreciate it more. With
Or,
abstract stuff.
You can do. Yeah, I mean, really, you can get across ideas like that with just as little as the title. You know, if that makes sense. Like, it doesn't take a whole lot to push someone in a certain direction.
Yeah, or at least get them started.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. You just want to guide them in one direction versus, it's when you give somebody 100 different paths to go down there, they're just like, forget it, I'm out. And but if you give them just the slightest little bit of direction, I mean, it's like that for making art too. If somebody hands me a giant blank piece of paper and a pencil, when I was younger, now that I've developed a look or a method or a process or an aesthetic, that helps guide me. But before that, I could have made any kind of art that had ever been made that I had ever seen. And that big sheet of paper and a pencil was daunting because I had no direction artistically. I've slowly chipped away at that, at all those different choices, and like sort of carved out my own path of using these little pieces of metal, to make bigger figurative welded sculptures. So that's sort of how I've made my own path. But like, it's the same way with making art, is looking at it. You need some kind of direction to get the ball rolling.
I guess I want to draw a jiu-jitsu parallel.
Yeah.
Right? I may know 50 different ways to get a collar choke, but Brock has 3 collar chokes, because this is the way that I move. This is the way I express it. So, yeah, I guess I understand that in that way of I know where I'm going because I know what kind of ways I start and end with things. Yeah.
Well, I got another one here, and this one.
Yeah, and if you're.
Oh, go ahead. You're good.
Oh, I was just gonna say to Brock, would it be valuable to you to continue practicing one of those other 47 collar chokes if you could just nail it with that first one every time?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, there are some world champions out there who are known because they do just a few things, but they do them perfectly, and no one can defend them because they came in there and just I think you're hitting the nail on the head that part of college and all this art education, right, is learning all these different methods. Here's the whole spectrum. Find your place inside that spectrum. Yeah, narrowing it down into Mr. Jason here.
What were you gonna say, Dylan?
This is going to come off a little bit pretentious, but I know a lot of people, and especially throughout history with art and sculpting, always talk about a legacy. Whenever you make these pieces, and like you did with the memorial one, is there ever a feeling? I remember you said something earlier about you were talking about the rust on a certain type of metal, and you said that this will be here long before or long after us. So is there ever a feeling whenever you're putting a piece together where you feel like you're leaving yourself down in history with that piece?
I was about to say no because I'm not going to be here to care, and on the surface of it, I feel that way. Like, what difference does it make? I'm not going to be here, so I mean, I'm not, fooling myself into thinking I'm going to be watching from the clouds or something like that and really giving a shit about how long my sculpture's lasting. But at the same time, I think there's something to that makes me want to work in steel. Like, I think I've chosen steel as one of my main materials because there's a permanence to it. I mean,
oh yeah, absolutely.
You can stick a piece of steel outside and it's going to last longer than a piece of cardboard or even a piece of wood.
Oh yeah.
So like, I don't know that I've totally reconciled the two of those with myself, to be honest with you, because on one hand I don't care, but on the other hand I obviously do.
Yeah, well, I don't think it's just a thing within yourself. I think it's been proven throughout history that everyone in their own little way wants to be immortalized. Like, in whatever craft they're doing, people want to be remembered. And even the guys that say they don't care, I mean, they still continue to do it, and like you said, even though you don't care, you still you reflect on it, and it's you chose steel. You chose the one that's going to be there, the one that's going to stay, the one that's not going to go away.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to have to spend time thinking about that, mulling that one over.
Yeah.
But
that was just something I was curious.
It could. Well, I think a large part of me wanting to make something last too is to be able to confidently say that it's going to be long-term value as well.
Yeah.
I'm not going to try to sell something to a collector that's going to put outside in a sculpture garden, and I wouldn't be able to sell that, if I knew that it was going to fall apart in 7 years, that kind of thing. But there's definitely something more poetic that makes me really want it to last too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think you kind of hit it on the head, Dylan, when you said time immemorial. I mean, the point of the story of Beowulf is men trying to cement their legacy. One of the oldest stories we have written down is about a guy trying to cement his legacy in the Hall of Heroes. I think we as humans always want to contribute something in that manner. And it's not, I don't even think it's pretentious to say.
No.
It's why we have kids, right?
Exactly. I was going to say that.
Yeah. Brock, do you know the poem Ozymandias?
Yes, I'm actually a big Shelley fan. So.
Yeah, see, that's one of the one that one has always that's I don't that I think that kind of says something about why I've always enjoyed that one so much, is because there was there's a little bit of a romantic tragic aspect of it, because you always want to see the rest of the statue, but
yes.
Yeah, explain it.
Oh, well, I mean, yeah, it's a short story, right? A short story type poem.
Yeah.
Go ahead and pause that.
It just talks about him walking
into a desert, and
is that me?
Yeah, that might be your phone over there calling. Sorry about that. But I mean, the story is basically a simple story about a guy in a desert, right? Goes through the desert. And it's not him telling the story, it's someone else telling him the story, which I think is even one of the more beautiful things, is it's a secondhand story. And it's in the middle of a desert, in the middle of nothing, right? But here lies a broken statue, if I'm not mistaken, right? The broken statue, it's not all of it, just the feet and the plaque, basically?
Yeah, it's just the feet, yeah. Well, it's just the feet as far as I can remember, and but it implies, the feet are so big that it implies, the rest of the statue being, hundreds of feet high or whatever.
Yeah, and then, it basically just says, "Look on ye mighty in despair." But
there's it's definitely a warning, don't get too full of yourself. But there's something about the lasting quality of those feet that just always struck me as really, really cool.
Yeah, actually the
maybe
beauty,
that's why I work with steel.
No, and the beauty of what you're saying right now, I've never viewed it that way. I have never thought about those feet are still there, by God. There was a statue, there was a civilization, something did last of that. I've never.
Yeah, it's.
Boom.
Well, it just it's like there's this a whole culture that's implied. That those feet embody a history of an entire people.
Wow. Yeah,
I'm gonna put that down because it's heavy.
Yeah, the top of my brain is now tingling because you have struck a chord in me that I've never read it that way. And like I said, I love that poem. Actually, you hit a poem that I was like, yeah, I'm all about rah. So you know what? I love it. That's human experience, right? Through your lens, it has another thing to it. And I think even going back to a way into art, if you would just give people a way into it via title, via letting you follow people on social media. I mean, you're so right. The way into just may be look at it through your own lens. And maybe Dylan's just too much of a caveman to have a lens.
More than likely. Shout out to Addison Jackson.
They do well.
Everybody's got a lens.
Absolutely. I mean, I think in life we should always do something difficult because that helps expand that lens. If you ever feel truly comfortable with something, maybe it's time to shuffle it up a little bit, kind of thing. But yeah, and I guess once again, why do we keep going back to college? But they expand you. They pushed you out. They gave you a welding rod and said, "Get after it." And you said, "Oh, this is nice."
It's not nice.
I can tell you one thing. I didn't learn how to be a professional artist. I might have in a lot of ways learned how to think like an artist, which is I think has served me well. But they dropped the ball as far as teaching me how to survive as an artist.
I really hate the left brain and right brain
they
separation. I hate the lag. I keep on interrupting him. I'm so sorry.
I'm gonna throw something at him.
No, it's cool. I was just saying that my experience in graduate school, especially because they're when you come out of there, you're going to start working. When you come out of undergrad, a lot of people can choose to go to grad school, but in graduate school, they're basically teaching you how to get a job at a graduate program to teach other graduate students. So it's I don't know, something weirdly incestuous about it, but
I agree.
They certainly didn't teach you how to or expect that you be able to make art professionally.
Yeah, I don't think, in a lot of, I guess this goes back to that craft versus art, right? When you learn a craft, they're like, all right, you're doing ceramics, this is what you're going to do. You do welding, all right, you're a welder now, you're going to go fabricate. But yeah, you're right. For the artist, it's never like, all right, guys, in this class, we're going to talk about ways to sell your art. You almost have to become your own entrepreneur, right? Because that's it, right? You're selling you and what I make.
Yeah, it's a shame that it's like that too. Like I wish, I don't know. It makes you wonder if tenure has a lot to do with it. They're not connected to the outside world, so they don't even understand how to do it themselves. But
maybe you should go be a guest speaker.
Consider it. Yeah, if they did consider it, it might be a topic that would be below them too. So
the hotty.
I still have a little cynicism.
Nothing wrong with it. A little cynicism just is a little realism. It's just spewed out. Yeah, you're right. There should be definitely like workshops and stuff like that with guest local artists, or maybe they just listen to our podcast and you tell them how to do it. No, but yeah, that's true.
Matt,
what's up?
I was actually going to say, what is your way in besides the welding? Like, you've been real quiet. I was wondering what your thoughts are on, do you look at outdoor public sculpture or welded sculpture and see just the welding aspect of it, or?
I see the process. What I see is, so like with your horseshoe things, I'm just looking at it and I appreciate the form, the neatness. It's crisp. It's done with these, because you're stacking horseshoes on top of each other, but it still has this real unique hard line on it. You know what I'm saying? It's not just jutted out everywhere. And I'm sitting here looking at it and I'm like, how the hell did, because I know what it takes, because I build handrails and stuff, so we do circular motions and all that, radiuses and circumference arcs. And so I'm sitting here looking at it and I'm like, he has a lot of curves in this, and most sculptures are just very linear, just like that. And I'm like, how the hell did he do this? And that I get way obsessed with the process of, like, how did this happen? What process was there a skeleton he made? Did he build off of that? And that's what I appreciate so much about it. Because and the first picture I saw was and I saw this actually 3 years ago, or however many, I can't remember how long ago it was, but I know it was a long time ago. And I saw it on Facebook, and I was like, and I was at the welding shop. I was showing everyone else. I was like, check this shit out. And they were like, oh, that's really cool. And I was just sitting there, and I was just staring at it. I couldn't even wrap my head around how the first steps were made, you know?
Yeah, well, I was actually, that was one thing I didn't get a chance to ask you guys beforehand, but, like, I didn't know how you guys had gotten in touch with me, or what made you guys want to get in touch with me.
I think the bottom line.
I mean, it doesn't matter.
The bottom line is you had a social media presence, so you could be contacted and discovered. And hey, look at this guy. And I mean, Matt was like, "Look at this guy. Look at this guy."
Matt was all over it.
No, that's that's exciting. Like, I think Brock and I could sit up all night talking about Shelley or the ideas behind whether or not grad school offers any benefit to the professional world, but like Matt and I could sit up geeking out over how something was put together. So like, no joke, I'm just as happy doing one over the other, and so that's one of the things that's been most enjoyable to me is being able to talk to some hard ass guy who's been welding for the last 35 years, who doesn't give a rat's ass about Picasso or even could name another artist.
Well, not 35 years.
But like, but that's what I'm saying. It's like I get so much pleasure from being able to relate to an old hard ass welder that doesn't hear anything about art, but he and I can relate on the process aspects of things, and like I eat that up. And since my stuff is so has such a process as a part of it, like it's really cool when when I'll call about a tool or something that I'm looking at buying, and I show give them try to describe the process of how I'm going to use it, and they get so excited about talking about it because it's so outside the ordinary day-to-day of their sales calls, because like they're used to selling to like one industry and that's it, and they've got the specs and but then they want to use this. They're talking to this kid on the phone who's going to hang upside down and do something with it at twice the speed or something, and they just can't get enough of it. So
now I guess that's,
I don't know. I just think it's fun.
Yeah, I mean, and I actually wrote down obsessed with process whenever Matt was talking about it, and it made me want to ask, how much do you obsess about the process? I mean, how often are you just staring off at the dinner table eating, and it's like, honey, how was your day? Yeah.
I am obsessed with the process up until the point that I figure it out and am able to use it. At that point, I don't. It just becomes a part of the known process, if that makes any sense.
No, yeah, absolutely.
Because it's a solved problem. So, like, yeah, I mean, I can get pretty distracted when I'm trying to figure out how to like enlarge a little clay man into something 9 feet tall. Like that can take up a lot of brain space. But as far as like otherwise, I don't really care about the process, because that's where we come back to the craft versus the art. Because I've every time, I mean, I've even done glass blowing. And I mean, I've done some ceramics, some blacksmithing, and some glass blowing, and they're so cool the first time you do it, and it's like, oh wow, this opens up a whole nother world of possibilities. But then it doesn't take me very long in that world to say, okay, this is a stale process now, and I certainly am not interested in the craft side of it, like just the pure process. So then it's like I kind of sour to it at that point.
Yeah, no, so, I actually understand that, because Dylan and Matt can tell you, I'm the kind of guy that all the time, if there's a problem to be solved, if there's a problem, I'm a problem solver. But once I solve that problem, it's like, all right, cool, that was a cool hobby. Next.
Yeah, he'll get the and it kind of sounds like, and when I listen to you talk about glass blowing and what's the blacksmithing and things like that, it almost seems like you're insulting them, because you talk about like getting into and understanding the process. But I understand what you're saying is you get all the fundamentals and you realize that's really all you want with it. And Brock's like that with a lot of things. Is he'll pick up things and he won't ever be an expert. He's never going to be an expert whatever he does, but he'll get good enough at it to feel like he sufficiently knows his way around the craft, and then he leaves.
Well, that's all he needed to know about it. He got what he needed out of it. Yeah, and you're right. I don't mean it insulting, but there's a lot of blacksmiths or potters out there that will take offense to that, and they do.
Yeah.
Well, regularly.
I think if they listen to your whole spiel though of what you're saying, it's not though, because like I said, you also understand that there's even a deeper level that you can't go into, right? There's deeper levels of maybe some of this glass blowing and maybe some of the shaping of glass and things like that, or different types of glass that you're like, that's fine, I don't need that.
Yeah, I'm not about glass blowing. That shit looks miserable.
It's hot, right?
Yeah.
It just looks miserable.
Well, yeah, it's pretty hot. I mean, it's not like casting iron, I can tell you. It ain't that hot, but it is pretty warm. It's tricky stuff. I mean, I don't know. Glass is like the opposite of steel when it comes to a material.
Oh, yeah. That's super easy.
There's very little durability in it, right? It's kind of like, whoop, messed up, done, throw that away, let's try again.
Yeah, and that doesn't even play into the whole, what we were just talking about. But yeah, it's a weird thing. And it's, I don't know. But that's there again, it goes into the whole craft side of it. You have to know so much about just one material. So, I don't know. I'm just one of those, there is some art out there, or some artists who make art, and the ideas behind their art is the obsessive, schizophrenic, doing the same thing over and over and over.
Just neurotic, almost.
Yeah, it's totally, especially with, the awareness of, mental health. I mean, I think it's even become more, you'll even see it more. Dylan, you might go into an art show if you ever happen to, and you could see some woman artist who has crocheted an entire house, with the TV and the couch and the lamp and the stove and the dinner. I mean, that's the kind of thing I'm talking about, where she will take a truckload of yarn and freaking crochet a whole damn house,
every detail.
But that's what it's about. It's about the obsessive aspect of that. It's that's insane. I mean,
that impresses the shit out of me. When I see stuff like that, I'm blown away.
That's totally a way in for you to it may not mean anything to you, but you can start to there's something impressive about that. And you can't look past the ideas of the artist, okay, it has to mean something about the fact that this is insane. It's so it's I don't want my work. My work is not necessarily concerned about that, but I'm starting to have to admit that there might be a little bit of that in there, But really, it just comes down to my history of casting and wanting to reproduce things. I like mold making and all that, and I don't need a team to cast metal. When I can just weld little bitty pieces to make big things.
You know what it sounds like to me? It sounds like you learned how to effectively manage ADD.
Yeah, I think I probably did.
Well, no, I mean, because some people would say, well, that's ADD. You learn a little thing and you move on. I get blamed to the same thing. You learn a little thing and you move on. You learn a little thing and move on. You never truly zone in on something. But at the same time, the products that you're making are just...
You can't see it, but there's a stack of Mountain View paintings on his counter over here of just mountain views and grassy fields and rivers and maybe a little house. And there was a 6-month period where every time I'd come over here to see my buddy Brock, he's sitting there watching, what's his name?
Bob Ross.
It was Bob Ross.
Bob Ross. And he's got his painting stand on. He's got his whole stand, his paintbrushes, the whole 9 yards, and he's just getting it. And I'm like, what the fuck? Here's this savage I came up in Kuwait with, and now he's over here Bob Rossing it up. And a couple months passed, and I'll tell you what, it's nice little paintings.
To be fair, Bob Ross was a savage too.
I like them. I'd probably put one of those up in my house. Those are nice paintings, and I haven't seen him paint since.
Bob Ross has become like I guess you'd call him a meme.
Oh yeah,
he's hitting meme
or
material.
like a pop culture. Yeah, but like it kind of makes me sad because like I was so desperate for that kind of input as a kid in the early to mid '80s. I mean, I'll be 40 next year, so like when I was just a young kid and just starving for any kind of input as far as art goes, like Bob Ross was the shit as far as
oh yeah,
my exposure.
There was no one else doing that. There was very few paint shows or anything like that. And inside of a 30-minute window.
That's what amazed me is what he got done. A lot of guys I see put out videos and they time lapse it. They time lapse their art and they'll spend 9 hours and condense it down to 10 really hardcore minutes. But Bob Ross would get it done.
Looking back on it now, through what you're saying, Dylan, that probably screwed me up because that created some like totally unrealistic expectations. As far as,
yes, absolutely.
That's probably why I was so impatient. Trying to paint something, I couldn't take how long it took.
Set the bar right here. Set it way up here.
Well, but in all honesty, it goes right back to what we're talking about. Bob Ross did that. Bob Ross painted trees a certain way. Bob Ross, started with a wet background, and he carved his path, right? Just like you have carved your path into the way you do things. And that I don't even think sometimes people appreciated that this man didn't have an idea, just like you were talking about. It's not that he knew exactly what he was going to paint. He kind of had a thought, but he just went in there and started doing what he does and knows how to paint the way he paints, and bam, there it is.
Yeah, he picked his chokehold and then all of a sudden had a grove of trees with a mountain behind it.
There you go. And I think he started painting in Alaska, if I'm not mistaken. Off the top of my head, he started painting in Alaska, which is why so many things were mountain views, because he looked outside and it was always a mountain.
I don't know.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, it's still sick what he can do with a palette knife.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah, and that was the other thing, the knifing techniques, and drawing the little trees with it. I mean, the amount of control in the whole arm for what he was doing.
You know what the fuck we're talking about now.
Well, we got you uncomfortable. There you go.
We got Matt on his toes. Yes.
We got him in the corner.
Hey, and all those mistakes, Matt, just turn them into birds.
I know that. I get that joke.
I guarantee you sit him down and make him sit down for 5 minutes of a Bob Ross episode, and he'll sit through the rest of it. There's just,
I've watched him before.
And that's another thing that blew me away is I'm not super crazy into painting, but Bob Ross just had a certain charisma about him that would pull you completely in. It didn't matter if you could care less about art. The way he talked and the way he approached it just made you want to sit down and listen to him and see what he's trying to tell you.
Well, let's just talk about this for 1 second. We have a man almost 40, got a 30-year-old, and then men just into their 20s. He affected 3 generations of people, right?
Holy shit.
You thought Matt was 40, didn't you?
Well, I don't know. I stopped guessing a few years ago because it just gets depressing now.
No. I mean, there's nothing to it, But the fact that he can hit those notes that resonate, even just with him talking, in the way that he approached life. But it was interesting thought. Now,
no. I think I don't disagree.
So I want to get back to the 11 men that you built. What did you build those on a skeleton structure first?
No, I built those from a life mold, a life cast that it's actually based on my body. I had a buddy of mine wrap me up in plaster.
Oh, okay.
And cut the plaster off. So I was able to use to lay the punches in there, weld it from the inside, like if you took a basketball, wrapped it up in plaster and cut it down the middle, you have 2 bowls, you fill both of those sides up with pieces of metal welded together, and you pop them out and put them together.
So the square one must have been pretty hard, where you used the square rod. Was that square rod or was that flat bar?
No, it was square. It was it was 3/4 inch, and I had those cut into. Yeah, that one runs vertical, so that it's running the lengthwise, and that was actually pretty cool. That one was based off. Did you see the one that was made out of railroad spikes?
Yes. Yes.
That one was super. Like, I didn't know how that was going to turn out, but it was part of a show that was themed, like, because it was at a train depot. So I was able to get a bunch of railroad spikes from a train company, and it turned out so cool, and it taught me a lot too about how about the way. Like, I was always worried about having to force the figure into the form, rather than trusting the viewer to find the figure in the form, if that makes sense.
So that one didn't quite fit the mold?
No, I mean, if you think about it, I mean, if you go back and look at that one, there's a whole lot of negative spaces in there because, railroad spikes are big and chunky, so like...
And long.
There's like... Yeah, and long, and I mean, they're just fat. So it's like, and they're weird shapes. So like, I couldn't lay them out and create a skin there, so they just sort of filled up the space as best I could. But it looks, I mean, there's no denying what it is. And that taught me a lot about, like, I don't need to think that I have to control the viewer's experience, because I should have known it by then, because, when we're children, we look up at the sky and find turtles and pigs and Abraham Lincoln in the clouds. So like, if we can find all that and just,
puffballs,
water vapor, then yeah, I shouldn't think that I have to like beat the viewer over the head with a figurative hammer for them to be able to understand what I'm trying to represent.
I like the cloud thing.
Yeah,
it's a weird. Yeah,
no, that makes.
It's a weird thing.
Sense.
I mean, it doesn't take much to each one of us instinctively wants to see a person. It's like scary movies wouldn't be scary movies if we didn't see everything as somebody else.
Yeah.
The one with the square rod's one of my favorites.
Yeah. Now.
Well, that's what I was getting to, was like, that was the first time I experimented, but I made that one because of the railroad spikes. Right. That's the reason I asked, because, and I want to, and I'm still, I don't think I'll ever finish experimenting with different materials, because each one of them creates a different feel to it. Like that one you're talking about with the square stock, it has sort of like, it's the same standing figure as the ones I made for the memorial, but it's got like this pixelated digital type feel to it. When you stand back and look at it, the fact that they're all vertical and they're all square, it's like, it's got a completely different feel to it.
That one made me, there was a couple of seconds whenever I first saw it where I was just looking at it and I was like, this almost doesn't look like steel. It doesn't look like metal whenever I first saw it. It looks like, I don't know, it just seemed very drawing-like. It was interesting. Because that one was one of those where I actually learned to space out and look at it.
The lines kind of stood out in a way, because
it's a very vertical. It looked almost oriental. If I don't know if that's the right term, but it was very It was something. It was something.
I mean,
that one was special to me.
I haven't thought about it in that term, but it makes sense, because I mean, think about how much bamboo is vertical lines,
right.
And like. Anytime somebody's going to use bamboo, it's just going to be standing up straight, or and it's going to be in multiples too. Like you don't see just one stick of bamboo. No. In the wild, it grows in, like kudzu, but like when you use it, you use it in multiples. So it's like the bamboo reference makes a lot of sense to me. I'm going to have to think about that too. But yeah, it was really cool making that one, because I thought that one brought a whole different feel to it. And what's really weird is I said I was making my own punches, just making them out of weathered steel by cutting that round stock, but like there's a surprisingly big difference between the punches from the ironworker that have that mushroom balloon top from where it blows out the bottom.
Yeah, the tip pushed it.
It's Yeah, it's got a little nipple in the backside, but the part that that goes that
It's
comes
rounded.
out the hole,
Right, it's rounded.
It balloons, it sort of mushrooms out. But like whenever I use the ones that I've made where I've got the rounded side out versus that clean cut edge from the bandsaw and the square and the round stock, just that is I mean, it's subtle. I mean, I'm not gonna say it's a night and day difference, but like.
Oh no,
if
it's a huge difference.
Compare the two, you have to think.
No, that's a huge difference.
I mean,
looking at it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's what I was getting at. Like the mushroom punches, they have a softness to them, whereas the straight edge bandsaw cut stock is like hard. I mean, it's like I don't know. It's pretty interesting to me.
And I'm just gonna point out.
What were you gonna say?
I was just going to point out that the punches, what that is for people that don't know, is it's like metal. If you put metal in it, and we call them iron workers, there's this little die that'll just knock a hole through it, and the metal that, like a donut hole. So okay, you like don't. I'm just pointing that out for people that don't understand what we're talking about. So like how you can go buy donut holes, that's pretty much what those are.
If you remember from like grade school, or if you work in an office and have a 3-hole punch for paper,
yeah,
you know how you dump out those little white circles out of the bottom of it?
Yeah,
that's the punches, except in steel,
right?
Okay. Now we've talked a lot about metal, right? Do you ever see yourself anytime maybe trying wood, or even maybe mixing the medium again, like a steel and wood, or you know a lot about clay and ceramics. Have you ever thought about maybe a mixture of, or maybe something else after this big project?
Yeah, I totally. I'm not married. Like the aversion to the craft side of me keeps me from like tying myself to any one material, really. But so, and I've worked with wood in the past, so I'm cool with wood, and I've actually started to enjoy wood more. Being from the South, I always hated working with wood, but that was only because I thought wood consisted of yellow pine, which sucks ass when you're trying to do anything,
Yeah, there wasn't any purple heart or anything like that around here.
No, and when I first got a piece of hardwood and started messing with it, I was like, oh my God, this is like. This is amazing. I mean, it's almost steel, but so yeah, I'm really interested in doing some hardwood stuff. The only thing is, like, right now, my mindset when it comes to like the work that I consider making goes in the direction of public outdoor work, and wood, as long term as wood can be, it's not. It's
not lifetime.
It's not. It's not as long. It's not as permanent. So, like, I mean, I'm actually going to the trouble of getting this, weathering steel shipped in from Birmingham rather than just buying stuff locally because it's mild steel. So, like, I'm trying to use a more longer lasting, / professional material just because, to solidify that long lasting aspect of it. But yeah, the next time I get ready to make something that's going to be like an inside piece or for an inside gallery, something like that. And yeah, all materials will become open, really.
Wood and metal work has always had this weird similarity, and to me, except wood is not fuck up proof. Steel to me, steel to me is fuck up proof.
I'm just going to agree with you. Yeah. That's sort of my whole thing. It's like
I just hate the lag.
Yeah, I didn't mean to talk over you. But,
no, you go ahead.
No.
But I was just going to agree with you. Like that's one of my biggest problems with wood is like you can't fix it. I can plug 100 holes in a piece of stick plate, and you can't plug. I can't fix wood like that.
No, you can bend the shit out of metal and you can just knock it back and flatten it out, roll it if it needs to be, if you creased it, you can roll it back and get most of the crease out or something.
I can't imagine being like 2 months into a woodwork project and you chip off the guy's arm. The amount of rage, like, I think I'd...
If you do that with metal, you get to
I
weld
can't
it up
either.
and grind it down.
Wait, say it again?
Yeah. Oh, I was just agreeing with him, saying that, yeah, you just weld it back on.
Yeah.
But with wood, if you fuck that up, do you just take an axe and go at the whole thing?
You go at whatever you can fix.
Yeah, I think, like, realistically, like, you know, I'm kind of taking the humor out of it, but, like, I don't think you get to a point where you spend 2 months on a wood project and you're still somebody who's you know, accidentally going to knock the arm off.
Yeah, that's true.
I guess that was a
You
little
don't
too
know.
amateur of me.
You don't know Dylan at all.
That's that's one of those things where it's like a fundamental error from planning or something.
Yeah, I didn't plan your grain
Yeah.
out right, or
Which
The guy who
happens.
the guy who spent 2 months making a wooden, you know, figure or figurative sculpture with an arm on it that can be knocked off has measured. You know, he measures 3 times before he cuts.
yeah, true. It's very true.
Oh, gosh.
So, like, basically, you have a pretty big shed in your backyard, right? I mean, your workspace is a pretty large one from what you do, and based on what I see on your videos and pictures and things like that. Is that correct? That's all in on your property, or?
Yes.
How do you pick it up?
Well, normally I use chain falls because, you know, that's the cheap hoist. But and I'll, you know, there's a beam going down the length of the shop, just supported by all the, you know, the 30 or 40 joists, ceiling joists. But I would have pulled the whole studio down around me had I tried to pick up the horseshoes like that. So.
How did you pick that one up? I need to know.
Well, if you scroll back in Facebook or Instagram, you'll see that one of the pictures of me, I've got my MIG welder hanging from a gantry. I've actually got the MIG welder lifted up into about 6 feet in the air. So that was so that I could get my trigger all the way up to the metal 3-inch square tube and gantry that I fabbed in place over the horseshoe sculpture.
Now, I seen it on a trailer, right?
Yeah, and I had to do that to pick it up to be able to back the trailer underneath it.
Okay, yeah.
But, you know, I couldn't pick it up, you know, I couldn't put that much weight on the structure of the studio. So I just went and got a bunch of steel and fabricate, you know, welded a gantry in place, just a frame, a big A-frame to be able to hang a hoist, you know, a chain fall hoist off of and pick it up in place.
Okay. So, like, that's
Does that make sense?
Oh,
Right,
yeah.
yeah.
No, yeah, absolutely. Even I got it.
I'm actually looking at.
When you started talking about the A-frame and the chain fall, I was like, okay.
I'm looking at pictures now.
Now, that's stuff that takes a long time to acquire, right? I mean, you didn't sit down one day and goes, here's a list of things that I'm going to need for this to be in my studio. I mean, you're the guy. I mean, you kind of mentioned it before. You're constantly on the phone with somebody. You're probably constantly having to research even little tools, right? I mean, it's almost like a mechanic. He has a lifetime supply of little tools he's gathered over the years.
Yep. I'm fine. I'm just now getting to the point where I can, you know, really stick it to the people who called me a hoarder for years. You know,
Well, I mean, I guess in some ways.
Now I'm utilizing all that.
Yeah.
See, that's the difference between you and Brock. When I call him a hoarder, it's because he's got a lot of stuff. Like, you've got tools, he's got stuff.
Hey.
A bandsaw's not stuff.
It's a tool. No, and that's what I was kind of wondering. Like, your materials, I mean, you kind of have to acquire those materials through whatever means becomes necessary, right? You can't just go dropping a grip of money on something and then hope that the project comes around, right?
Yeah. Yeah, for real, though, like, I mean, it's a joke, but in some ways, I wonder if I lived through the Depression. I wonder that myself because of how quick I am to keep things. But I've come to, I have since, it's been years since I realized that, no, I use this stuff later on. I'll eventually come back and, go find that weirdo thing I stuck in a drawer somewhere. So it's like, I'm comfortable with it, but it did take a while. I mean, it took long enough that I was starting to wonder myself, do I have a problem? And, but it turns out I had, right about that time, I had started to need the things that I'd been saving. And like now it's taken me probably 15 years to build up the studio that I have now with tools, materials, and that's just it, tools and materials, and I've only had this space to work in for about 3 years now.
Yeah, and so like that's just kind of something I want to say, because a lot of guys, even in just talk normal life, you're talking about 15 years to acquire the things that you have, and I think that happens so much with today's youth on anything, right? They graduate college, they want to get a job, they want to get the house, start the family, da 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 da, but they don't have the stuff. They haven't built the foundations of what they're going to be. And I think that's true for artistry. I think that's true even, like I said, for the mechanic, in their shop. I mean, it's just almost a universal life truth that you have to build things one small layer at a time to eventually get to anywhere, right?
I'm waiting for the rundown ironworker to restore.
The what?
The rundown ironworker. I'm just waiting for that.
Man, I want a trip hammer. Even though I'm not a blacksmith, I'd still love to have a power hammer.
Yeah.
But I don't. It'd be cool to have an ironworker. But I agree with what you were saying, Brock, and I would even go so far as to say that it extends to experiences as well. You can tell a lot about somebody based on like I've taught a bunch of sculpture classes and early sculpture classes in grad school, and even working in a university right after grad school before I had enough of that. But it's interesting when you see a 3D student or a Sculpture 1 student come out with these like really big grand ideas about life and everything that's important and all this, really just stupid ideas for a sculpture, but they think it's so big and grand, but it's because they don't have the experience to see the value in the mundane or the day-to-day, or and they haven't been they haven't lived long enough to create that cynicism about the big ideas. It's like, or to realize that most of the big ideas are bullshit, so it's sort of, I don't know. I just think what you were saying also relates to like experience and the way you think about life in general.
Yeah, I think that
it's like you need a capacity there to work through.
No, I think that's absolutely true. I mean, what's that old movie quote? Life is pain, and anyone who's trying to sell you something different, or anybody saying different is trying to sell you something. Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah,
I thought the video.
A lot of beauty came out of that pain too.
Well, I mean, yeah. There's life is I think a constant, beautiful little pendulum swing of anything. Your emotions, right? You can't be happy all the time. You get happy all the time, man, you just get burned out. You can't be sad all the time. You get sad all the time. You just feel like none of it matters. You can't be angry all the time, because if you're angry all the time, then you're not learning anything.
It's the people who are happy all the time that you probably ought to watch out for. Like, like Robin Williams seemed happy all the time to me,
Yeah, it's very true. There's a certain mask. I think there's a certain mask we all put on, but you have to make sure that it's a healthy mask, because you do have to guard yourself a little bit in this life. You can't just let everybody run over you, but choose it wisely. Now you spoke, and when you said I had enough of that, speaking about teaching undergrad students. Did you just realize that teaching was not your gig, or that you wanted to do other things?
Yeah, well, no, it's not that I wanted. Well, yeah, it's that I wanted to do anything, but it's funny, when you're a kid, you think college is like the peak of intelligence, but then you get out of college and go teach some freshmen or sophomores. It's like they're the biggest dumbasses you would ever. I mean, it's like they're seventh graders
with no life experience.
So, no, I mean, I'm being funny. I mean, I'm kind of exaggerating now, but it really is like, you got to be kidding me. I mean, it's nuts. But no, I mean, the biggest part of it wasn't even that, because the one thing that could get you through a class of teaching a bunch of idiots was that one or two kid that really clued in, and that was satisfying enough that you could get through the whole semester or year with just the satisfaction from those handful of kids getting something out of your class. My biggest problem with academia was just the bureaucracy. I just couldn't take the bureaucracy and the politics and the overall system of it. So I would have rather done anything but that.
Yeah, and I think speaking to the, I have a funny little story of I deployed to Haiti for it was right at 5 months. I lived in Haiti in a tent, building little hospitals and schools for them. Little small ones out in villages. And I came back and I went to school. I went back to college for a couple of semesters because I was like, hey, I want to go back to school. I want to, want to finish my degree. And I remember sitting in this intro history class and looking around, and I was 23 at the time. But I'd just been living in a tent with no air conditioning for a bunch of months. I finally got some of them life scars on me, if you will. And I was looking around and I was like, I don't belong here. These are kids, and it's true.
I've not been in the military, but I've had similar enough experiences where you go from one daily activity to something more routine, and so I've had enough of that to make me wonder, how in the world do servicemen come back and accept day-to-day, American society life? And I don't know. It's always fascinated me.
It's
just exactly what you're describing.
It's very, very hard. For one thing, when you're in those situations, you bond as a team. I mean, me and Dylan had a lot of time deploying together. And then there was a time I was in Afghanistan and that he was in Iraq. We were in two different parts of the world. But, man, the one thing I can tell you about my time in Afghanistan, the men that I slept in those bunks with were absolutely my team. And then guys that I didn't know, they were just over there. I happened to bump into them on a mission or something. They were absolutely my teammates, and you get this feeling of camaraderie that we're all in this shithole together, so let's all work together. And then you get back here, and it's the goofy stuff. It's the lady on the phone in Walmart, in the line, not paying attention to her crying kid, who's not even unloading her groceries very quickly. She's not getting to the task so that everybody else can get to their task. And you're right. There was a few months where I just want to grab them and scream at them. Then you got to go, that's not their life. That's not their world.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing that I pull off from it is appreciation.
Yeah.
That's a big thing, is you get the guy that's pissed off because there's pickles on his burger, and he's yelling at the people that work at McDonald's for $7 an hour, and I'm just like, you could just take the pickles off and throw them in the trash.
Yeah, that's not to matter.
Little things like that don't matter, and I look around and I see guys that get upset and they're screaming in traffic because the guy didn't move and he might have missed the light by a few seconds, and he blew his lid right there. He's freaking out, and you see all those little things that don't really matter.
You learn they don't matter. And also the thing that, the way I settled things like that standing in that Walmart line is I had to learn to appreciate they have that bubble. Thank God that that lady is okay with operating in the world like that, and that she's never had to be so scarred that she is on this hyper level all the time, just firing, waking up in the middle of the night. Did I hear something in my house? Did I hear, what was that? You know, I had to learn to appreciate that.
So, it sounds like it gave both of you a larger context, just that created empathy.
Yeah, you have to exercise the empathy or you have nothing left. Empathy is the Go ahead.
I'm sorry. It's weird. Yeah, this lag is really weird. But you said something something when you were talking made me want to ask you one other thing about that is the camaraderie is the sense of collective closeness that you guys develop and bond when you're over there. But then I was thinking there's also the idea of the enemy that also, helps solidify that camaraderie. Like it reinforces it, or they work together in hand, despite which one comes first, they work together. But so when you're back at home, which one strikes you more, or which one is more
which one is
prescient
missed?
to you? The lack of which one is missed? The lack of the comrades or the camaraderie, or the lack of an enemy?
So me, Dylan, and Matt both all do jiu-jitsu, and I think that's probably my greatest replicating drug, because I get to make Dylan my enemy for 5 minutes, but he's also my blood brother in the fact that we get to train together. And as far as which one is missed more, I would say the camaraderie is missed more, but I would say I
didn't want to say missed because I didn't want you to think you were longing for it. Like
which you kind of are.
You do.
Which you kind of are.
You do.
But I mean, you don't long. Yeah, I guess that's true. But like, which one is more noticeable? The lack of the camaraderie or the lack of the enemy is the thing I was getting at. Like, which one strikes you as most obvious?
The camaraderie to me.
I mean, I don't really feel like I miss either, because I constantly stay in a training camp.
Yeah, but if you took away that.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I haven't taken that away.
Yeah, I've never taken it away. But I would say the camaraderie is what you miss, but I think you absolutely understand that it's because there's someone out there trying to get you on why you're that way.
There's another.
Yeah, and it's so easy to fall into us versus them. I mean, there are people that scream at each other over Facebook over these tiny little political things that I go, none of that matters. There's a guy out there who just wants to cut you up because you're just an American. He doesn't care. He doesn't care what side of the fence you fall on right there, people. Yeah, you constantly have to examine your microscope, I guess, whenever you're looking at people and you're seeing people and the having the them drives that camaraderie. But I think we were so programmed for that throughout all these years. There's predators in the woods, and there's bad guys trying to get you. And
well, it's something I notice now that I'm a little bit deeper into my career as an amateur. Is like when it started off, it was always, okay, you fight this guy. Who's this guy? Nobody knows who this guy is. He's 0-0. Okay, I'm gonna fight him. I have no face or anything like that. But now I'm fighting guys who've had fights and who've had experience and who have a name. And so now I get to put that with the face. The whole camp, I'm fighting this guy. Like, let me watch his fights. Let me focus on what he does. Let me see where he's right and wrong. And it gives me something to, or almost someone to hate. Almost like it. That's the enemy. That's who I'm after. Like, it really does make a difference. I don't know if that kind of.
I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
No, I think you guys as jiu-jitsu would. Yeah, I mean, I think it makes total sense of how that would fulfill, a need that is gone from you not being, employed.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know a lot of guys, you're right, a lot of guys struggle with it because they go back to their construction job or they go back to, you know, their mundane life, and they all of a sudden realize no one's got my back. Why does no one have my back? I got their back. You know, and it leaves it's just a void. You know, it's a void that they have to figure out a way to fill, and there's no good answer, unfortunately.
Join a club, find a team. That's really I think that's what a lot of service members are missing whenever they get off active duty or they get out of that environment. It's that joint suffering or that joint hardship, and it doesn't have to be crazy. I mean, if you start an amateur sculpting class, like, it's going to be complicated and it's going to be hard, and everybody's got to work together to figure this thing out. But if you get in there with all those guys and y'all start working on projects and start doing stuff together and exchange information, change numbers, go out and eat lunch together, that's that camaraderie. And it's not like it's unreplicable, or however you'd say it. It's not like you can't replicate that. Like, it can be done. You just gotta go out there and make it happen. You gotta go join a team, join a club, start a sport.
Yeah, do something hard.
I was just gonna say that strikes me as an interesting aspect, because in the military you don't have the choice. You don't go out looking for it to get it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's forced on you.
Exactly. And then whenever guys get back on the civilian side, they don't have anybody forcing you to go work out in the morning with Tom, Jake, and Blake. It's like, what do you do in the morning? Well, I'm just gonna sit at my house. Well, even though that seems like the easiest, nicest thing to do, you're missing out on that opportunity to bond and to grow and to develop with the people around you.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I think that's super interesting.
Yeah,
I think you're absolutely right. You know, the blood, sweat, and tears of your fellow man will open up. You know, for men, especially, I know that guys sometimes like to put on this hard veneer about them, right? And I can stand alone and I can do things alone. Sure, until you try to do something actually hard. Until you really try to conquer something, then you need a support system, and you got to be honest with it.
Yeah.
So, believe it or not, this has been 2 hours.
Yep.
Holy crap.
Yeah, I think Matt. It's fun watching Matt when he's not talking.
What's he do?
Oh, he was playing with the stupid.
I was over here playing with this and all that.
Yeah, he fidgets and he does all kind of stuff.
I have a hard time
He
sitting
wants
down.
you to notice him.
Notice me.
Oh, you can't.
Don't make the joke, Dylan.
You can't help but notice him.
Do not say it.
So before we get this all wrapped up, I want to go over how can people follow you. What's your social media names that they can come on and see, and let's just get at it.
Well, they can find me on. For the past year or so now, I've really been trying to use Instagram, where, I spent years rejecting social media. Now I've just tried to accept it and use it.
We forced it on you.
Yeah, that's how we found you.
Yeah. So J.A. Kimes is my Instagram username. That goes back like to the first email address I got 20 years ago, probably. But J.A. Kimes, Kimes. And I think you can find me if you just Google Jason Kimes. Facebook is one of the first few results, and I was lucky enough to get the domain jasonkimes.com, so you can see finished works on the website jasonkimes.com.
And you show a lot in New Orleans.
Instagram. Yeah, New Orleans is it's where I show most everything right now, especially since I make larger stuff that takes. I'm not putting together a 12 to 14 sculpture show, gallery show in 6 to 12 months right now. I'm making a sculpture in 6 months, but it's a public sculpture that's going in a public place. So, it's kind of a different route than what I had expected to do as an artist, but I'm really digging it because I like to make a dramatic public display of it. So, but I'm selling there because it's a marketplace it's the closest marketplace that has the collectors that have the willingness and the funds to actually support a full-time career. I could sell the same stuff around, South Mississippi or anywhere in Mississippi and make probably 20% of what I could do going down there where there's an actual art marketplace.
Right. And what was your Instagram name?
J.A. Kynes. It's Juliet Alpha Kilo India Mike Echo Sierra.
All right. Good. Look, he even went phonetic alphabet with it.
I expect to follow back. I'm following you.
He's following you all. That's right. You can follow Dylan and see the hard morning workouts he does and go, maybe I should go run.
Yeah.
And then, so Facebook, Instagram. Do you have a Twitter?
Yeah, the Twitter. I mean, I've got a Twitter, but, since I'm just a solo sculptor, I've never been able to get into it. But I anytime I post to Instagram, I always, click the Facebook and Twitter. So all the Instagram photos should be up on Twitter too. But yeah, I think Twitter is J.A. Kynes as well.
Okay, awesome. So and then you can
find me J.A. Kynes.
All right, and then you do have your website, indeed. So I think.
Yeah, jasonkymes.com.
I think that covers it as far as getting some more people to find you.
All right.
Let's see. Anything we missed? Anything else?
No, we did the plug and everything.
Did the plug?
We did the plug.
I'll tell you one plug. Commercials suck. That's right. Commercials suck. No one wants ads. So go to patreon.com, support Gorilla Banter, keep this thing ad-free. All right. Another great podcast. Stay on with us, Mr. Kymes, and we're going to talk to you after this. But from Gorilla Banter Studios, I'm Brock. That's Dylan. Say bye, Dylan.
Bye.
Say bye, Matt.
Checking out.
Wave bye to him, Mr. Kymes. Woo!
All right.
See y'all.